Hi everyone, welcome back. Today's video is going to be another round of decluttering some of the eyeshadow palettes that I have in my collection because I've realized I just don't use these and it's time for them to go. So the first one I'm going to talk about is one that I thought I was going to love, and I don't think I've touched it since I got it. I know I tried it a few times, but after that I just haven't reached for it, and that is the Tarte Toasted palette. I was really excited to get my hands on this when it first launched because I really like the Tartelette palettes. I feel like the quality is excellent, the pigmentation is good, the shadows are lovely to apply, and they smell really good. They smell like vanilla, which is exciting to me. I like scented eyeshadows, but I don't reach for it. And you know, it kind of makes me sad because I'm looking at this now going, you're an absolutely beautiful eyeshadow palette, but I haven't reached for it in the time that I've had it. So why am I hanging on to it? Because I know I've got friends and coworkers who would appreciate this so much more. I tend to bring in my discarded products to them and they get to pick through them, so they'll be very excited because I have a lot of neutral eyeshadows as it is, and yet neutrals aren't really what I like to wear the most of. So this is just sitting in my collection rotting. It's not gone off, there's nothing wrong with it, but somebody else needs to love it more than me, and that's just gonna be the case for all of these eyeshadows, really. It is beautiful. I'm looking at this now having momentary regret, but I know that if I give it away, I'm not going to think about it because I haven't thought about it in the 2 years that I've had it. The only reason that this came up recently in my collection and in my memories because I did that, I think it was what I bought at Sephora in 2017. I think this was in there, or maybe that was 2018. And I realized that I haven't been reaching for it. So I'm done. I'm breaking up with Tarte, the Toasted palette, and somebody else is gonna love it more than I will. Okay, next is a Maybelline palette, the Soda Pop palette. I was so excited to get my hands on this. I picked it up in New York City in 2018, and I don't think it was that expensive either. I wanna say I paid around $10 or $12 for it. I really liked the color combination in here. I thought it was something a little bit different for Maybelline. They'd had the Lemonade palette out before this, but I hadn't picked it up because I wasn't that into the colors and I felt that they were a little bit too neutral. So I thought that this one had a little bit more punch to it. And it does, but I don't reach for this one, and it's mostly because I just don't think the eyeshadow quality is that good. Every time that I've used this, the look that I've created with it just looks a little bit flat, which I don't like my makeup to look flat. It's not a fun or exciting thing. And it's funny that I thought that this was a little bit more colorful than Lemonade, and I guess it is, but if you remove the shades down here, like, that is very neutral. And really the only colors that are exciting in here are Cherry Cola and Grape Pop. So if you remove those two, or maybe I'll do it like this, that's still like a predominantly neutral palette. So I'm not getting any use out of this. There are people that I know who prefer a softer eyeshadow that when it's applied it doesn't look as intense as, for example, what I'm wearing. So I think they'll enjoy this more than I will. I just always like super intense pigmentation with my eyeshadows, and this is not giving it to me. And somebody, oh no, okay, I get a bit of a smell now. Somebody had mentioned to me that this sort of smells like Soda Pop, and I was like, I don't think I've smelled that before. But oddly, I smell more of a grapey soda kind of thing right now than I ever have before. So that's a little bit bizarre. But anyway, Soda Pop is gonna get a new home. Okay, moving on to some Too Faced palettes. And I didn't realize I had 3 in this video, but I do. So the first one actually isn't an eyeshadow palette, but it's the Little Black Book of Bronzers. Now, first of all, I love Too Faced bronzers, but I have these, most of them, in full-size formats. So I don't need this massive book because this has been sitting, move over, this has been sitting on my bookshelf where I keep all my eyeshadow palettes, but it's not an eyeshadow palette. So I never think to go reach for my bronzer palette because it's sitting in a completely different area from the rest of my bronzers. Plus, like, there's so many in here, it's massive packaging, and I already have these in like singles anyway, so why am I holding on to this? Like, I have Milk Chocolate, I have the regular Chocolate Soleil bronzer, I have Sun Bunny, and maybe that's it, but I don't really use the other ones anyway, so why am I holding on to this? Somebody else will love this more if they want to experiment with bronzer. There's a whole bunch in here. There's a whole bunch of shimmery ones. There's deeper tones. I did really like that they had, you know, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and then the regular chocolate Soleil in here. I thought that was really nice because, truth be told, I can get away with wearing dark chocolate if it's like the dead of summer because I'll deepen up enough. So that was nice to have, but I don't actually feel like I get that much color in the summer anymore. So I'm not reaching for that deep of a bronzer anyway now. And these shimmery ones, I don't really reach for a shimmery bronzer. I feel like I'm over that phase in my life. I just kind of want something a little bit matte to not contour my face because I don't use bronzer like contour. I just want something that's matte-ish to sort of add some sun-kissed color to my face. So yeah, this is just going away. I haven't reached for it, I want to say in 2 years, which is a very long time. So it's leaving. Okay, the next Too Faced palette. This is not going to be a surprise to anybody because I feel like this was hated across the beauty community, and it's the White Peach palette. I had such high hopes for this thing when they launched it because the Just Peachy Mattes palette was so good. I love that palette. I still own it. I use it. I think it's fantastic. So when they put out another palette with the same packaging in that sort of peaches and cream collection, I was excited. Unfortunately, the shades in here are just not good. And they are very pale, which should technically work for my skin tone because I'm light but not completely fair. But they don't. Like, these are all excessively pale transition colors if that's how I was going to use them. And some of them are just way too similar in tone, like Peach Smoothie, Sweet Fig, Fuzzy, and even Peach Sorbet and Peach Suede up here. They're all basically the same sort of tonal range of colors, and they're just way too similar. Like Fuzzy here and Sweet Fig are basically identical. And then while the mattes perform nicely, which Too Faced is fairly known for, I feel like they do good mattes, the shimmers, which fill out the rest of this palette, are just kind of all over the place. This Peach Passion shade down here is so crumbly and so flaky. I don't like it. And then Peach Ice over here, which I really had high hopes for because I do in some palettes like a bit of a flaky, shimmery color. I just feel like this one dusts away so much that it's basically pointless to use it. And it would often either flake under my eyes or look crumbly on the inner corner of my eyes or just disappear completely. So that's frustrating. And then I think the only shade that I really liked in here and has been the reason that I've held on to this palette for so long is Peaches and Dreams up here. And I kept this with the intention of using that shadow because it's gorgeous. And have I used it? No. No, I haven't. I haven't used it at all because I don't think of this palette because the bulk of it is just junk. So hopefully somebody else will like this. I mean, there's got to be somebody out there that will enjoy this thing, but I am not that person, and it's just a poorly laid out palette. There is no reason that all of these shades should be in the pale variety. Like, sure, you got two darker shades down here, but they're too dark to like meld with the other colors. It's just way too much color depth in these two compared to the other ones. Like, I can't deepen up this color with like a black. Like, it just does not work. So yeah, no, hugely disappointing palette. I held on to it for so long and there's no point. There's no point me owning this one anymore. All right, the very last palette I'm going to talk about in this video is another Too Faced palette, and this is another one that I've held on to for a very long time for no good reason. It's the Natural Love palette. And I say for no good reason, but I know what the reason is. I think this was $69 when I bought it 2 or 3 years ago, and that was one of the most expensive palettes that I had ever purchased at that point. Like, the Vizart Editorial Brights was $100, but I might have gotten it on sale for $80. So for this to be $70, I was just kind of horrified, I guess, and that's why I've held on to it. But it's silly because I don't reach for this thing either. So this came out a few years ago, and I snapped it up because I was at the height of my Too Faced eyeshadow palette obsession, and that's it. That's my only reason, and it's a dumb one because this is too neutral for me. A lot of these are shimmery, which I prefer mattes now anyway. I don't remember back then what I was thinking, aside from my obsession with Too Faced. And you know what? I don't reach for this thing. And I thought that it would come in handy at some point or another, but it's not handy because the palette is so freaking big and it's so neutral and it's so shimmery that I don't reach for this. And again, I've held on to it because it was so expensive, but I know I've got somebody at work that will love this palette so much more than I ever could, because there's nothing inherently wrong with it. I mean, the shadow quality is good. The shade selection is bland, but quite acceptable for most people who want to wear makeup on the daily. It's just not very me. And that's the inherent problem with it. But I've held on to it because it was so expensive. I didn't want to feel like I'd wasted my money. But you know what's wasteful of money is keeping a palette in your collection that's taking up space that you're not even using. Like, how am I not wasting money by just keeping it in my collection, letting it sit there? It doesn't make any sense. But now I'm finally ready to part with it, so it's gonna move on. Whew, I feel like that was a really rapid fire declutter, but I've had these sitting on my shelf sort of bundled together as I thought about them over the last few weeks and whether or not I would miss them. And I didn't think to use them in those 2 or 3 weeks that they've been sitting there, so I'm not gonna miss them when they're gone either. And in fact, they actually free up space on my bookshelf that's a little bit overburdened right now with eyeshadow palettes. But I can put stuff on it that I actually enjoy using and use on the regular. So these won't be missed. Somebody else will love them dearly. And I guess now I'm happy to have them out of my collection because I don't have to think about them anymore. I don't have to be about, ugh, that stupid white peach palette that's just sitting in my collection unused. So yeah, I feel better about it. All right, that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.